Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear students, you're welcome back to the e-learning portal of CTY Model College. This is Economics Ss3 class, week 8, lesson 1. And the topic is agriculture. We shall start by looking at the meaning of agriculture. Agriculture is the practice of cultivating the soil for the growing of crops and the rearing of animals, for the provision of food and other products for human use. We have treated briefly agriculture when we're looking at the Nigerian economy. I told you then that agriculture used to be the mainstay of the country before crude oil was discovered, and since then agriculture has been neglected, and that has made its contribution to the gross domestic product to be less significant than it used to be. Agriculture used to contribute majorly to the gross domestic product of Nigeria before the 70s, before crude oil was discovered and exportation of crude oil took over the production of agricultural products. At that time, agriculture used to contribute over 70% of the gross domestic product, and agriculture employs over 70%. Agriculture contributes more than 40%, and employs more than over 70% of the population of the country. But now, the contribution of agriculture to the gross domestic product is around 22%. In fact, in 2019, agriculture did not contribute more than, it did not contribute up to 20%. It was 19 above. It's around 19%, and presently agriculture employs just about 37% of the workforce of the country, and that is due to the negligence of the sector. Despite the decline in the share of agriculture to the GDP, agriculture continues to play a significant role in the development of the economy and society. It provides a large number of jobs, about 36%, produces foods, raw materials, and contributes to food security, poverty reduction. It contributes to the development of trade and the economy. Let's look at the components of agriculture. 1. We have crop production. This involves the cultivation of food crops and cash crops. Food crops are crops majorly for consumption, like rice, yam, beans, maize, while cash crops, on the other hand, are crops produced majorly for sale. Some of these cash crops serve as raw materials for our industries. Examples of cash crops in Nigeria are rubber, cotton, cocoa, oil palm, and so on. The second component of agriculture is livestock production. Livestock agriculture involves the rearing of animals for consumption, sale, or production of raw materials from these animals, transportation, sports, etc. Let me take it again. This involves the rearing of animals for consumption, for sale, for production of raw materials, for transportation, for sports, etc. Livestock includes rearing of cattle, sheep, lambs, goats, rabbits, poultry, snail, etc. The next component of agriculture is fish farming. Fish farming, also known as pisciculture, involves raising selected species of fishes commercially in tanks or enclosures such as fish ponds, streams, etc., usually for food and for rearing, for earning a living. Excuse me, please. I said fish farming involves raising or breeding selected species of fishes commercially in tanks or enclosures such as fish ponds, streams, etc., usually for food and for earning a living. The next component of agriculture is forestry. Forestry is the science of creating, managing, using, conserving, and repairing forests, woodlands, and associated resources for human and environmental benefits. Forestry is practiced in plantations and natural strands. So that's that on the components of agriculture. Agriculture is made up of three components. Agriculture is made up of crop production, that is the production of food crops and cash crops. Livestock, that is the production or rearing of animals. Fish farming, that is the breeding of fishes. And then forestry, that is the planting and managing of forests. Managing forests and other materials that can be gotten from forests. And now we move to the systems of agriculture. That is how agriculture is practiced. We have the peasant or subsistence farming. A peasant or subsistence farming is a system of farming on a small scale, mainly for meeting family or direct consumption, mainly for meeting family needs. Example is you having a small piece of land in your backyard to plant tomato, pepper, yam, maize. That's an example of a peasant or subsistence farming. You do this basically for you to be able to use these things for food, to harvest them and cook to meet family needs, and not for you to sell them. So this is what we mean by peasant or subsistence farming. Subsistence farming is a traditional system of farming which makes use of simple farm implements like hoes and cutlasses. Hoes there. Use of simple farm implements like hoes and cutlasses. The next system of agriculture that we're going to look at today is mechanized farming or commercial farming. It's just an opposite of subsistence farming. Subsistence farming is a traditional farming that makes use of crude implements, crude implement, and it is majorly for what? For direct consumption to meet family needs. While mechanized or commercial farming is a system of agriculture that involves the production of crops, animal rearing on a large scale. Don't forget, the peasant or subsistence farming is usually on a small scale, just to meet family consumption. But mechanized or commercial farming is any agricultural practice that is any agriculture or farming that is on large scale in order to what? Mainly what? For sale. In order to offer them for sale, to make money. So that's why it's called commercial farming. It is to make profits, to make money, to earn a living, to earn money. And mechanized farming make use of complex modern tools, unlike the traditional tools used for subsistence farming, unlike the crude implements used. In mechanized farming, complex modern tools like plow, tractor, harvester, planter, sower are used. Mechanized or commercial farming is capital intensive, that is, it requires huge amounts of money. The next we are going to look at is plantation farming. Plantation farming is a commercial agricultural system that involves the cultivation of cash crops, usually one major crop, on a large areas of land. It could be an estate. An estate could be devoted to planting a major cash crop. That is what we mean by plantation farming. You can have acres of land, many acres of land used in planting a particular cash crop. So plantation farming is usually the cultivation of cash crop, usually one major crop, on a large area of land. It could be an estate. An estate could be used to plant that particular cash crop, mainly for sales. Plantation is Or plantation farming is capital intensive, that is, it requires huge capital, huge amount of money, as it involves the use of mechanized tools and the provision of basic amenities on the farm. But we have a standard warehouse, standard storage facilities. We're going to provision of sophisticated mechanized tools. The next we're going to look at under the system of agriculture is cooperative farming. We have treated cooperative society, and one of the types of cooperative society is the farmers cooperative society. I hope you remember, a union or association of farmers, mostly small-scale farmers, coming together to farm together, to market their products together. I hope you remember, to use farm implements, to come together to buy mechanized farm implements together in order for them to what? To enjoy economies of scale of production. So cooperative farming is a system of farming in which farmers form a union to carry out agricultural practices together in order to enjoy economies of large-scale production. So they are able to use mechanized tools on their farms, which an individual farmer may not be able to afford. They are able to market their farm products together, which an individual farmer may not be able to achieve. So this is where we are going to stop today. But before we go, let's briefly look at what we have discussed before we go. We defined agriculture as the practice of cultivating the soil for the growing of crops and the rearing of animals for food and other products for human use. Then we also looked at the components of agriculture. Agriculture is made up of the crop production, livestock production, and fish farming and forestry. Then we also looked at the systems of agriculture. We have the peasant or subsistence farming, that is farming that takes place on a small scale, making use of simple implements, crude implements like hoes and cutlasses, and it is majorly for consumption of the farmer and not for sale. We also looked at the mechanized or commercial farming, that is farming that takes place on large scale using mechanized or modern tools, and it is majorly to sell the products or the yields. Plantation farming is also another commercial agriculture system that involves cultivation of cash crops, usually one major cash crops, on a large areas of land using several acres of lands. Use several acres of land to cultivate, to plant just one major crop. Then we also looked at cooperative farming, in which farmers come together to form a union for them to carry out agricultural practices together in order to enjoy economies of large-scale production. So this is where we are going to stop today. Till we meet again, yours sincerely, Adirogba. May Allah continue to protect every one of us, guide us, be with us, increase us in knowledge and understanding. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.